So that gives you a good sense of the overview of the Tennessee study that the researchers at Vanderbilt did. Just to give you a couple of information points about the Tennessee pre-K program, it's a voluntary program. It's a full-day program for 4-year-olds who come from low-income families in the state of Tennessee. And as far as the descriptors of the program are concerned, you can see that there are 4 different items up there that ordinarily are associated with quality preschool in terms of adult-child ratio, the qualifications of the teacher, the class size, and the curriculum. So those components are all there. The Vanderbilt group, as they were doing their research, posed the question that you see there. Do children who participate in Tennessee's voluntary pre-K program make greater academic and behavioral gains than comparable children who do not participate? And the interesting part about this is, even though they have over 18,000 kids participating across the state of Tennessee, they actually don't have enough spaces for the number of 4-year-olds who would qualify. So what they did was they have the opportunity to do really a randomized control study, taking kids who do get into the program as opposed to kids who didn't. And what the Vanderbilt research team had to do was to say to the preschool providers throughout the state and the state of Tennessee, give us the names of the kids who qualify, and then we randomly are going to pick kids and we're going to assign them to preschool or no preschool. So that's how they got the cohort that they studied. And this is the first time in the United States that there's been a randomized control study, a trial of a state-funded program like the Vanderbilt program. They've been looking at 1,076 students, 773 participate in the voluntary pre-K program, and 300 of the students did not have access to the program. In terms of the results, as they said in the radio clip, the voluntary pre-K program absolutely prepares kids for kindergarten. Kids walk through the doors of kindergarten ready to go. It had the largest impact on children whose mothers hadn't finished high school or on children who were English language learners. That the effect of the pre-K program began to fade towards the end of kindergarten, and this very puzzling result, by the end of 2nd grade, the control group actually was performing better academically and behaviorally than the cohort that had been through the VPK program. And then another interesting finding is that at the end of 3rd grade, ELL students, whether they were in the group that had had the pre-K or the control group, were actually scoring higher than kids who were native English speakers. So there are lots of puzzling results that are coming out of this work. The interesting part about it is we can stay tuned for more, because they're going to continue to study this group of kids as they move forward through school, at least until 7th grade. So we'll be getting more information from them about this. But what we wanted to do was to have just a little bit of a conversation with Jean Marie and with Avo, and then to see if there are thoughts that all of you have that you'd like to contribute to the conversation as well, just about reactions to this. Avo and Jean Marie come at this from slightly different lenses. Jean Marie through looking at the quality of a preschool program, Avo perhaps more from a policy perspective. But I think to kick this off, what I'd love to do is ask you each, when you first heard that NPR story or saw it in your newsfeed or wherever you first got the word, kind of what was your initial reaction to the results? And now that you've had a month or so to kind of digest them and think about them, has your reaction changed at all?
This is on, yes. Okay. I guess part of my reaction was not surprising, because I think I've been following early education research for so long that I've seen, studies going this way and that way. Also not too surprised, because I feel like the media all loves to hop on the outliers and sort of make hay with things that don't go exactly the way that we think they do or they should. And I spent a good deal of this morning reading all kinds of responses from many different quarters to this study. And I guess what part of my takeaway is a month later is it's fascinating. I mean, it's really fascinating, the fact that it's drawing this much attention. It continues to push us to think about what do we need to know about developing effective and sustainable high-quality programs that give children the boost that they need that will sustain them? So, I guess my takeaway of this right now is I want to keep digging deeper into it and watch it.
And my first thought was the study proved exactly what we've been saying for decades, is that investing in preschool makes children school ready. And that's what you heard from the researcher. When the kids were coming into kindergarten, they were doing much better than the kids who had no preschool. So that was my first reaction. The second reaction about the quote-unquote fade-out was, frankly, I dismissed it. And the question I had in my head was, well, what the heck did they do wrong? And I think that's a question that Vanderbilt is going to study to see what they did wrong. Since the study's come out, I dug into it a little bit more. I've seen some of the flaws in their evaluation, and I'm no evaluator, but I've heard others talk about those flaws. But I also have seen the difference in quality amongst programs that were studied, and I think that's the biggest issue with saying that there's a fade out. The other thing that when I heard the story first, the term fade out came out, was said, and I know we're talking about it here today too, but the other reaction I had is, can we stop calling it fade out? And I went and I looked at the study, and sure enough, it's not fade out. It's that the kids at the end of second grade caught up to the kids that had the preschool program, right? And so the question then becomes what are the interventions that are happening to children from K all the way through second grade that cost a lot more, frankly, than the preschool program in the beginning? So a lot of initial reactions, some of it more dismissive than I think I should have been, but dove into it, and I think I have a lot more questions than answers.
But I want to just point out one thing also is that, when they talk about fade out, really much of the long-term impact of high-quality preschool programs is demonstrated beyond third grade. It's lifelong, lifetime impacts. These are many of the returns on investments that we see, and they aren't only before third grade. They go on and on and on in many different quarters of society and in life.
So let's think a little bit about the quality piece of this. And with each of your perspectives on this, you would think, given the descriptors of the pre-K program in Tennessee, that they have the quality indicators that have been established by the profession as being a sign of high quality. And yet, for whatever reason, the results in this particular study, the kids arrived in school, as Avo said, kindergarten ready, but then do those effects persist over time from participation? So my question would be, Jean Marie, to you from an educator's point of view, when we talk about high quality preschool, I know when I first arrived here at the county office, I thought we've got to get as many kids as possible into preschool, and we have to do it as quickly as we possibly can. And I told Jean Marie that, and she kind of looked at me, and she's very patiently over time helped me understand that, yes, it's important, absolutely, to get more kids in preschool, but that quality level is actually more important. So help us understand from an early educator's point of view, what does it mean to have a high-quality program?
Well, and I think yes, thank you. One of the things that is pointed out here, and you pointed it out in your slide, is that the National Institute for Early Education Research, NIER, has 10 benchmarks of quality, which are often touted as, these are the ones we all want to meet. And frankly, if you measure California up against them, we only have 4, I think, statewide that are required of the 10. Now, we have more than that in the big lift, but it really matters how you do what you do. Those benchmarks alone are somewhat minimal, and the way you implement them is critical. Just because you have them doesn't mean you're implementing them well. I want to recommend to you, and I asked Jane if we could send out the link to this study. This is from the Gates Foundation, It's called Lessons from Research and the Classroom. And it is really worth reading every single page, every word. They talk about 4 exemplar programs. Abbott in New Jersey, Boston, Maryland, and North Carolina. And they really go into the elements of quality. One of the things they talk about is how important the teacher is. And it isn't any old preschool program that will make the difference. Teachers need to be well prepared. Frankly, they need to be better compensated. They need to be supported. And it really is the quality of the adult-child interaction that is at the heart of the most important part of learning for young children. And it is that supporting professional development and the practice of how teachers are implementing the curriculum, how they're developing language, social-emotional development for young children that is so critical. The environment is critically important. The facilities that we place children in, are they well prepared nutritionally? And also thinking about their families. Are their families engaged in meaningful ways? So that the learning extends home as well as at school. Those are some of the elements of quality that I think we're really trying to get at with the big lift.
So, Jean Marie, as you talked about those quality elements, as I think about the programs that you mentioned as being exemplary, the programs that are exemplary tend to be investing a great deal more money in quality. So, Avo, I'm going to give you the easy question this afternoon. If we think about quality from a policy perspective, how do we help our policymakers understand that that increased investment is really, really important?
Well, I think that's a job for all of us, first of all. But the how is, we have experts in the room on the how. We have Vicki and Ted that'll talk a little bit later about the how to influence our leaders on a state level. I think locally we can't stop the education around the investment piece. I mean, we live in Silicon Valley and we hear all the time, what is so innovative about Big Lift and the investment in the preschool component of Big Lift? And frankly, the innovation part, we can get to that if we get to the funding part first. I mean, the Tennessee study, and this is the reflection a month later, how much are they spending per child on quality? And it's right around $5,000, I think, per child that they're spending in Tennessee. By the way, Tennessee ranks 46th in per pupil spending in K-12 education as well. So you got low investment early on, then you got the 46th level investment in the country when these children get to school age, and then you have other communities like Tulsa that spend 40% more in their pre-K program, and their longitudinal study looks great, and their gains are lasting past 3rd grade. And so for us, what does it mean for us in Big Lift? We'll be spending up to $12,000 per child in a Big Lift preschool classroom. And that's not enough either. And so I think educating the community, our elected officials about, it's not about just asking for more money for money's sake. It's really, if you want to get the results you want, you're going to get what you pay for. And it's that simple. And unfortunately, we're not paying what we want to get out of our education system. And then just one last thing, and Ted had said this before, I think, but one of the first reactions that I thought of when I heard this study was, I thought to myself, do you hear that? You guys hear that? Every high-income family in the country just pulled out their kids from a preschool program.
Because of fade out.
Because of fade out, right? No, guess what? That didn't happen. And it's never going to happen because they're investing in children at $20,000 a year, $30,000 a year, and more for preschool. But yet we're looking at studies that are investing $4,000 to $5,000 a year and saying, what's going on? What's the fade out? I mean, come on. So that was another reaction. I'm sorry to get up on it, but Ted has said it before, so.
And these are young children who are in families mostly who are living in poverty. So doubly wrong. I guess I also want to just comment on, the cautionary perspective here. You know, I was reading a couple of these papers this morning, and I saw James Heckman from the University of Chicago, the economist and Nobel laureate, calling into question the methodology of the study, et cetera, et cetera. But then Steve Barnett from NEAR sort of countering and saying, well, this is actually a bit of a tonic for us because we shouldn't be complacent. We shouldn't overpromise. We shouldn't say that just preschool is going to be the silver bullet. It's way more than that. And one of the good things about the Big Lift is it's trying to do more than just high quality early learning. But we can't just wait, and we can't just stop at the kids are ready at kindergarten. It's kindergarten and TK and first grade and second grade and third grade, and we have to support programs that support children every step of the way and their teachers. So we have to say, how do we sustain those gains and not just wait for the other kids to catch up? It's okay.
Absolutely, and I have to say, most of my life I've spent in the kindergarten through 12th grade public school system, and we've had really very, very little articulation and alignment between preschool and the early primary grades. And I think one of the greatest things about the Big Lift is it provides us with that opportunity, and we really are in discussions right now with the superintendents in the 4 Big Lift districts about how do we get that articulation happening? How are we sure that as kids go through that door on the first day of kindergarten ready, when they leave kindergarten, they're first grade ready, and then they're second grade ready, and so on. So very exciting possibilities. I think I would ask each of you, is there anything you want to add to this conversation before we open it for questions? It looked like you had something.
I just wanted to piggyback off your articulation and alignment comment because that was one of the recommendations out of the study. There is a huge lack of that articulation alignment in Tennessee and in California, frankly. We're doing a better job, much better job in San Mateo because of the support of First Five and the County Office of Education and Heising-Simons and other funders. But the Big Lift is embracing that articulation alignment wholeheartedly. And that was one of the huge deficits that the researchers pointed out in the study, saying Tennessee's got to do a better job of articulation and alignment.
And I guess what I would like to add is it's incumbent on us who are given so much of the responsibility for supporting the Big Lift programs and moving forward. It's incumbent on us to look at studies like this, to take the Gates Foundation work on exemplars and really compare what we're doing with what research and best practice is telling us, and keep reviewing and keep reflecting and keep refining and keep making it better so that it's not static. It really has to be a dynamic process that we're involved in.
Amen. Perfect. Any questions from the group we'd love to take? I think we've got maybe 5 minutes. Is that about where we are? We'll just start here and head across the room. Yeah.
Just from a PR perspective, is there any work that needs to get done when you're out there fundraising for the Big Lift and then studies like this come out that might kind of give some misconceptions about preschool education? Does the Big Lift kind of need to be ahead of that? Do enough people listen to NPR that might be funding us?
I did not think that the NPR piece was really negative. I thought that it was one of those things that makes you ask more questions, and maybe what we need to do is be out ahead of it with other studies that we can refer people to. But I don't think we need to be reactionary or defensive. We know that good quality preschool is good for kids.
Bob.
I was excited when this news came out because I felt like it would cause us to have to sharpen our game a little bit in terms of how we explain what we're doing. And I'm also excited because you guys are talking more now about programs that are successful and programs that are not, and causing people to go more that way. So now I ask, is there any more thought to allocating 1/10 of 1% of our annual budget toward going out and visiting programs that the Gates Foundation or your other sources say are successful, and kind of doing a little more face-to-face with best practices program? And $40,000 would pay for a number of trips, and I wonder if we're
Yeah, there's one of the best programs in the world is in Hawaii, actually, and I'll be going to... Just kidding. Hawaii does have a couple good programs, but to answer your first question, Bob, I think there's that's always a possibility for going and seeing programs on the ground. But I will just say that Jean Marie, the County Office of Education, these guys are state leaders in high quality preschool and what quality means, and folks come here to see our programs, and so I think the learning can never stop, as Jean Marie can attest to, and I think we can go to some of these exemplar sites. I think there could be room in the budget to do that for sure. But I will just to reiterate, I think the quality measures are one thing that are on paper, and this is what the study showed us. It's one thing on paper. Just like any policy, it's no good unless it's implemented the way it should be. And the big lift is focused on the implementation of the policies, not so much writing down how many policies and quality measures we need. And we have a whole team of folks dedicated to the implementation part of it to make sure we're meeting those standards.
And my perspective is simply, as we go to the broader community, people that are not involved in education, people that are skeptical of our education system, being able to say that our people visited Tulsa or visited Hawaii, sat down with people and came away with these 5 points. Believe it or not, I just think that really would help in broadening our success with community outreach.
It's also one way we might contemplate using our partnership with Google and their expertise is to perhaps rather than physically traveling there, doing Google Hangouts with exemplary programs throughout the country as well. But I think we can absolutely always learn from the best practices. Seth?
I just had a technical question about the study. When the kids when both the control kids and the pre-K kids were moved to kindergarten, were they in completely separate schools or school districts, or were they actually then mixed in kindergarten classrooms? Because if it was the latter, then it actually destroys the notion of control. Because obviously it's a different peer group, teacher has to teach a different group, or were they actually completely walled off until third grade?
My guess is they were in kindergarten classes together, maybe not in their particular area where they had originally applied to be in kindergarten in the TK program, but my guess is they were, but I may be wrong on that.
I have not gone to that level in the study, but there was a lot of speculation on just design of the.
I'd love to find. I mean, I could try to research that myself. I mean, if that were true, to me that in and of itself could actually explain the outcome.
Interesting point. I think there was a hand up over here. We'll do Elizabeth and then Harvey, and then probably we need to stop and move on to our next panel.
I just wanted to piggyback on George's point about the PR, because out on the coast, it did sound like a negative report to the people that wanted to hear it as a negative report.
Yes.
So I would encourage us as Big Lift to maybe have some sort of information, something that we could share with our communities so that people do hear that it's a much broader picture than just that little snippet of information.
I just say for communication purposes, I know that when the early learning field, and I've been guilty of this too, says that if you just invested in X, high quality preschool, you will have lower crime rates, better high school graduation rates, better economy. I mean, really big leaps. And I think some of the folks who are ready to jump on that love these types of studies to say, you know what? You guys aren't going to change the economy. You guys aren't going to help kids graduate. So I think tempering some of our communication and statements to what Jean Marie said is that, yeah, preschool is a big part of it, but there's a lot of other components to raising a child in a community for them to be successful.
Harvey, the last question.
Okay. We had the privilege, some of us, of hearing Professor Deborah Stipek, former dean of the Graduate School of Education at Stanford, talk about preschool a few weeks ago. And she sits on a credentialing committee statewide and is advocating the creation of a P through 3 credential. That goes to the point of articulation between preschool all the way through third grade. She is skeptical that this can be accomplished because the finance office sends 2 people to every meeting and tells them that they can do whatever they want as long as they don't spend any money. So the question I have is this: can the county
create a credentialing system and not wait for the state?
Yes. No, I'm just kidding. I do not represent the county.
I don't think that we can bypass the state of California's teacher credentialing program, but what we can do is have exemplars and expectations that we think should happen here in San Mateo County and really urge buy-in and work on it through that way. I would say, Harvey, what Professor Stipek is advocating makes such great sense, because if you do that pre-K to third grade credential, you are really getting people who are schooled in the developmental levels of kids as they're moving through those really, really critical ages. And it's very important. So thank you to everybody, especially thank you to Jean Marie and to Avo.